This is the Tree of Life, Season 2, Chapter 8. In this episode, we will be incorporating ideas from previous podcasts in relation to dissonant consensualities with our discussion in this season. To start off, dissonant consensualities are created by negation, that is, the rejection of an affirmatory narrative in relation to an impulse, created by one of the 9 dialogues of each intersection. In the past season, we have discussed how the 9 dialogues are a manifestation of a social actor interacting with archetypal consensuality. In that, a spatial non-consensual actor's impulses are concealed, that is, they do not interact self-consciously through social intersections. Which is to say that social intersections become nodal points as a manifestation of an interaction between 2 archetypal consensual actors. Dissonant consensualities were described as a negating response to an affirmatory narrative. In that, this pocket of experience is split or divergent. Social actors who repeatedly negate in response to affirmatory narratives skip from dissonant consensuality to dissonant consensuality. In the process, they effectively die and are reborn with each encounter with an archetypal consensual individual. What I mean by this is that the experiences that they remember are a projection, during the intervening period, created by the consensus reality, out of the ashes of their fossilized perceptual experiences. This means that although their consciousness is continuous, what they remember happening in the intervening period is not reflected in the history of the consensus reality, which they return to through each intersection. All of this is to say that linearity is a product of this skipping from nodal point to nodal point, or intersection to intersection. When they are alone, their perceptions do not reflect the experience established in the consensus reality. Because during those breaks their experience is, from the perspective of the linear actor, non-linear. Which is to say that linearity is an artifact of negation. Whereas, the self-realization represented by self-conscious impulses, in response to the affirmatory narratives of the 9 dialogues, represents an expansion of the actor's consciousness into a nonlinear experience. Now, archetypal territoriality was described as a kind of intellectual territoriality. But also, as a side effect of this nonlinearity, possesses a rather wave-like perceptual experience, unifying as the consensus reality. Which is to say, that the telescopic effect, which describes the stacking of perceptual experiences amongst lateral alters, such that their actions are analogous to independent spatial objects, whilst the local actor's objects are symbolic analogues of the global actor's objects, is a function of this wave-like nature of archetypal consensuality. Now, when a spatial non-consensual actor intersects with an archetypal consensual actor, a displacement event, the result, inasmuch as there is sublimation within the verbalizations of the archetypal actor, is the transposition of a reme, being an experience channel associated with a narrative of one of the 9 dialogues, into a meme, which is archetypal. All of this is to say that the archetype described by this process of sublimation is responsible for the linking of the telescopic effect between lateral alters. This means that the telescopic effect is the final stage in a translation process, beginning with displacement. In other words, the process is: concealed impulses generate spatial territoriality, which displaces the experience channel associated with expression of that impulse, which becomes an archetype, or meme, through sublimation in the verbalizations of the archetypal actor in response to the spatial actor, generating linking between the objects of consciousness of 2 disparate system members, states of arousal, as the telescopic effect. Essentially, what this means is, the nonlinearity beyond each nodal point facilitates a process of redistribution according to archetypal attribution. In nonlinearity, all actors can be lateral alters. The possession of specific objects of consciousness being attributable to specific roles described by archetypes. Thus, the role of nonlinearity is to eliminate what the consensus reality views as the misattribution of certain objects to non-archetypal linked individuals. Thus, the telescopic effect manifests between non-linearly related lateral alters during this non-linear period, solely for the purpose of reassignment of specific objects, according to archetype. Thus, during periods of nonlinearity, all individuals can be lateral alters, and the linking of individuals is merely the manifestation of shared objects, actual objects, or symbolic objects. Thus, what is previously described as appropriation is the reattribution of objects to archetypal assigned individuals through the telescopic effect. Once this is complete, the overlap is eliminated and the telescopic effect manifests purely linearly. That's the end of the podcast for today.